The mysterious encounter. The crew of the Starfarer had been drifting in the endless depths of space for weeks, far beyond known star systems. Captain Lucas had never seen such quiet stars before. No signs of life, no strange energy readings, just the cold, vast silence that stretched for millions of light years. The universe felt emptier than it had ever been. It was meant to be a routine mission, exploring, mapping, and then returning to Earth. But it was far from routine. Something was off. The first sign came on the third day after they had passed beyond the edge of the Alpha Sector. Lieutenant Emily watched the radar screen carefully. Her eyes narrowed. "Captain, I'm picking up something," she said, her voice quiet but urgent. "What is it?" Lucas asked, looking up from his console. Emily's fingers danced over the controls. "It's a signal, but not like anything I've seen before. The frequency is all over the place. It's too organized to be a random burst, but it's not any language I recognize." Lucas stood up and walked over to her side. He peered at the screen, his brow furrowing. It was a pattern, a signal that didn't belong to any known species. It was clear that this wasn't some ordinary space noise. He took a deep breath and then said, "Let's follow it." The Starfarer veered off its planned course, heading straight for the source of the signal. The crew could feel the ship hum with power, the massive engines carrying them deeper into unexplored space. There was a strange excitement in the air, mixed with a bit of tension. They didn't know who had sent the signal or why it was directed their way, but they knew it was important. Hours later, they came upon the source. The signal had grown stronger, and the Starfarer was now just on the edge of a star system they had never charted. The source of the signal was a massive dark shape hanging silently in space. It was too large for a standard ship, and its surface didn't reflect light like normal metals did. Instead, it absorbed it, making the ship appear almost invisible in the dark space. Emily's voice broke the silence. "Captain, I'm not sure what we're looking at, but this is no ordinary vessel. I've never seen anything like it." Lucas stared at the unknown ship. His instincts told him to be cautious, but the curiosity gnawing at him pushed him forward. "Take us closer. I want a better look." As the Starfarer drew closer to the enormous ship, the crew felt the eerie quiet settle deeper. Even the hum of their own ship seemed muffled. The ship ahead of them wasn't just large, it was ancient. There were signs of wear, damage that couldn't possibly be recent. It looked like it had been drifting in space for centuries, maybe longer. Its design was nothing like anything the humans had ever seen. The surfaces were smooth, but etched with strange symbols, like an alien script. "Can we communicate with them?" asked Emily, her voice filled with concern. "Let's try," Lucas replied, stepping back to his command chair. "Send out a standard transmission. Let's see if they respond." The comms officer, Lieutenant Jenkins, quickly tapped a few commands. The message was simple and universal. "This is Captain Lucas of the Starfarer, an Earth ship. We've detected your signal and are approaching. Do you hear us?" For several long moments, there was nothing. Silence, stretching out in the vacuum of space. The crew stared at the screens, waiting for a response that didn't come. Lucas felt the weight of the silence pressing on him. Just as he was about to give the order to pull back, the ship's communications crackled to life. "This is the command vessel of the Galactic Dominion," came the deep, almost mechanical voice over the comms. "Identify yourselves immediately." The voice sent a chill down Lucas's spine. The tone was cold, authoritative, and completely alien. "Galactic Dominion. What is that?" he muttered under his breath. He had never heard of such a faction before. "This is Captain Lucas. We are humans, explorers from Earth. We mean no harm." There was a long pause, and Lucas began to wonder if the transmission had cut off. Then, the voice returned, now dripping with amusement. "Humans, we did not expect to find your kind so far from your world. You are in the territory of the Galactic Dominion. You will not leave without our permission." The crew exchanged nervous glances. This was unexpected. They had stumbled upon something far bigger than they had anticipated. Lucas clenched his fists. He was no stranger to tough situations, but this one felt different. "Permission. We weren't aware of any territory," he said, keeping his voice steady. "We're just explorers. We followed a signal." The voice over the comms let out a soft, mocking laugh. "Explorers, you humans truly think you can wander through the stars without consequence. We've been watching you. Now you will answer to us." The message cut off abruptly, and the Starfarer's crew was left in stunned silence. What had they gotten themselves into? The overwhelming sense of power coming from the voice left little room for doubt. They were no longer in control. The Starfarer was a small ship, and whatever this galactic dominion was, it was far bigger than they had imagined. Lucas stood up, his mind racing. "All hands, prepare for anything. We need to find out exactly who we're dealing with." The ship began to change course as it was guided by an unseen force, being pulled deeper into the unknown. Whatever lay ahead, the Starfarer's crew was no longer just exploring. Now they were about to become a part of something much larger and much more dangerous. And somewhere, in the dark depths of the ship they were being pulled toward, something watched them approach. The mystery had only just begun. As the Starfarer drifted toward the massive ship of the Galactic Dominion, the crew felt an unsettling quiet settle over them. The communications had cut off abruptly, and the harsh voice from the other ship still echoed in their minds. The crew was tense, trying to prepare for whatever came next, but none of them had a clear idea of what they were up against. The Dominion's message had been direct, an unmistakable warning that they were trespassing in forbidden space. But what exactly was the Galactic Dominion, and how did they know so much about Earth? Captain Lucas stood at the front of the bridge, eyes locked on the view screen as the dark, looming shape of the alien ship grew larger. The unfamiliar symbols etched into its surface seemed almost to shift, as if alive, twisting in the dim light of the distant stars. The ship's hull had a glossy, obsidian-like sheen to it, absorbing the light rather than reflecting it, making it appear as though it was made of something otherworldly. It was a sight unlike anything the humans had ever encountered, and the feeling of insignificance gnawed at Lucas. "Captain, we're being pulled toward them," Lieutenant Emily reported, her voice tight with anxiety. "I've lost control of our navigation systems. They're overriding our commands." Lucas felt the weight of their situation. This wasn't just some first contact. It felt more like a trap, a test of sorts. How could a small Earth ship, no matter how advanced, be a match for something so powerful? "Maintain your composure, everyone," Lucas said, trying to steady his own nerves. "We don't know who these people are, or what they want yet. Stay focused. We need information." As the Starfarer was slowly drawn closer, Lieutenant Jenkins, the communications officer, attempted to send out another signal, hoping to get a response. But as his fingers tapped the console, the screens flickered, and a garbled message came through. An eerie mixture of static and deep, mechanical voices. Lucas could make out only a few words. "We know. Earth, you will answer." The message cut off abruptly again. It was clear the Dominion ship was doing more than just monitoring their communications. It was actively blocking their attempts to get answers. "We're not going to get anything through to them, Captain," Jenkins muttered in frustration. "They've got total control over our signals." "Damn it," Lucas whispered. "Are they jamming us, or is this something else?" The crew fell silent, each person staring at their monitors, helpless. The Starfarer was at the mercy of this mysterious force. Lucas paced in front of the bridge, thoughts racing. Their ship, though well-equipped and capable, was a speck in the vastness of space compared to this unknown power. "Captain, we're almost there," Emily said. Her voice was more anxious now, her hands tightly gripping her console. They've opened something on their hull. A docking bay, maybe." Lucas nodded grimly. It seemed they had no choice but to move forward, whether they were ready or not. "Prepare for boarding," he ordered. "All crew members, get to your posts. Weapons ready, but no one fires unless I say so." The Starfarer slowly slid toward the docking bay that had opened in the side of the enormous ship. Its immense size made it seem like a giant maw, waiting to swallow them whole. Captain Lucas's heart raced, knowing that they were about to meet the very force that had claimed this part of the galaxy as its own. The question was, what did they want with humans? Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. The tension on the bridge was thick, and every crew member was on edge. They all knew what was at stake, but none of them truly understood the power they were about to face. Finally, with a soft thud, the Starfarer was docked. The airlock hissed, and the ship's systems fell into a strange, unsettling quiet. Lucas felt his pulse quicken as he exchanged a quick glance with Emily. He could see the fear in her eyes, though she tried to hide it. "Stay close," he said to her, then turned to his crew. "Follow me. Weapons ready. We don't know what we'll face inside." The airlock doors hissed open, and a cold, metallic corridor stretched out before them. The walls were sleek and smooth, without any signs of human touch or design. It looked like the inside of a machine, not a ship. As the crew stepped inside, they were met with a group of beings. Tall, almost skeletal, with skin that shimmered like polished stone. They didn't move as the humans entered, merely standing still, watching with glowing alien eyes. Their presence was overwhelming, and Lucas felt his gut tighten. These were not the first aliens they had encountered, but there was something distinctly different about these beings. They radiated an aura of absolute power, as if they didn't even need to lift a finger to crush anything that opposed them. One of the beings stepped forward. Its voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the hall. "You are the humans, from Earth." It wasn't a question, but a statement. The voice was cold, calculating, and carried with it an authority that made the air feel thicker. "You have entered the domain of the Galactic Dominion, and now you will answer to us." Lucas swallowed hard, but he knew one thing for sure. The Starfarer and its crew were no longer in control. They had walked straight into the heart of something far greater than they could have ever imagined. The galaxy was vast, but it seemed that even its vastness had its rulers, and they were not happy to see humans here. With every step, the tension in the air grew thicker. The crew of the Starfarer could feel the weight of the situation crushing them. Their small ship, their small mission, now felt insignificant compared to the cold, calculating power of the Galactic Dominion. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the sound of their footsteps echoing down the hallway. Lucas could hear his own heartbeat, pounding in his ears. The crew moved cautiously, aware that any wrong move could set off something much larger than they were prepared for. But one thing was certain: the fate of the Starfarer and its crew now rested entirely in the hands of the Galactic Dominion. And it seemed that the Dominion was not interested in negotiating. They were interested in control. The air was thick with tension as Captain Lucas and his crew stood in the cold, metallic corridor. The beings of the Galactic Dominion loomed over them, their eyes glowing with a strange, unnatural light. There was no warmth in their presence, just a silent, oppressive force that seemed to crush the air from their lungs. "Follow." The leader of the Dominion spoke again, its voice deep and unyielding. Without waiting for any response, it turned and began walking down the dark hallway. The rest of the crew was left with no choice but to follow. As they walked, Lucas's mind raced. These beings, whoever they were, clearly had immense power. He had never encountered anything like this before. Even the alien species they had met in the past seemed primitive compared to the Dominion. This was something else entirely, something vast and ancient. The hallway stretched endlessly, its walls smooth and dark, devoid of any features or decorations. It was like walking through the inside of a living ship, its cold and calculating silence watching their every move. The crew was on edge, weapons at the ready, but no one had fired a single shot. There was something unspoken, an understanding that any hostility would be met with swift and overwhelming force. After what seemed like an eternity, they reached a large, circular chamber. In the center stood a massive throne-like seat, made from an unknown, dark material that seemed to absorb light. The being that had spoken before took its place on the throne, and the others stood around, watching silently. Lucas stood in the doorway, his crew behind him, unsure of what to expect next. The silence was deafening. There were no sounds, no movement, just the eyes of the Dominion watching them, waiting for them to speak. It was as if the crew was expected to know what came next, but the humans had no answers. One of the Dominion beings finally broke the silence. "You will answer us now," it said, its voice cold and demanding. "You are the humans from Earth. Your species is a mystery to us. We have watched you from afar. Now you will reveal everything. The location of your homeworld, your technologies, your weapons, and your alliances. In exchange, you will be allowed to leave. Fail to comply, and you will be wiped from existence." Lucas's heart raced. This was not a negotiation. These beings were not here to talk or make deals. They were here to dominate. He could feel the weight of their words pressing on his chest. It was clear they expected full cooperation, and their threats were not empty. He looked back at his crew. They were all tense, eyes wide, hands on their weapons, but unsure whether to fire or to try reasoning. But Lucas knew better. This was no time for heroics. This was a situation where every word and every action counted. "I am Captain Lucas of the starship Starfarer," he began, his voice steady but firm. "We do not know why you are interested in our species, but we are not a threat to you. We came here in search of knowledge, not war. We have no desire to challenge you." The Dominion leader's eyes glowed brighter, its face unreadable. "Your species is weak. You lack the power to challenge us," it replied. "Yet your presence here is an anomaly. You have traveled far, too far for such a primitive race. How did you come by your advanced technology?" Lucas hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. He knew the Dominion's power, but revealing their secrets could be just as dangerous. They were powerful, but they weren't invincible. Still, he knew it was unlikely that they would let them leave without getting what they wanted. "We have advanced technology from years of exploration," Lucas said, choosing his words carefully. "We have learned and adapted from what we have encountered in the stars. But we are not a threat to you." The Dominion leader tilted its head, its glowing eyes studying Lucas. "You lie. Your technology should not exist in such a young species. We demand the truth." The pressure in the room grew, and the air seemed to thicken around them. The crew stood frozen, not daring to make a move. They knew that their next words could determine their fate. "You were not meant to find us," the Dominion leader said, its voice taking on a cold, calculating tone. "You should not have discovered the ancient ways. Your species is a fluke, a mistake in the galaxy's grand design. But now you have piqued our interest. We will not let you leave until you prove your worth." There was a long pause as the humans tried to process what they had just heard. They had stumbled upon something far bigger than they ever imagined. It wasn't just a warship or an alien species they had encountered. It was something that had been watching them from afar, something with the power to erase entire civilizations. And they were not welcome. Lucas had no idea how to respond. The Dominion was not asking questions to learn. They were interrogating to dominate, to understand how much they could control, and whether humans were an asset or a threat to their empire. His mind raced, thinking about the best course of action. They couldn't simply give them everything they wanted. Yet, at the same time, resistance would likely end in disaster. "We don't know everything," Lucas said carefully, "but we are willing to cooperate. If you want information, we'll share what we can. But we ask for safe passage back to our homeworld." The Dominion leader did not respond immediately, but the silence was deafening. The crew stood still, waiting for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, the leader spoke again, its voice colder than before. "You will obey our demands," it said, "or you will face the consequences." There was no room for negotiation. The crew of the Starfarer was now in the hands of the Galactic Dominion, and the choices they made would either ensure their survival or seal their doom. As the tension in the room reached its peak, Lucas realized the full scale of the danger they were in. The Dominion wasn't here to make friends. They were here to claim what they wanted, and they would take it by any means necessary. The fate of humanity and their ship hung in the balance. The heavy silence in the room felt like a weight on Captain Lucas's chest. His heart pounded in his ears, and every breath felt forced, shallow. The Dominion leader's glowing eyes burned into him as if it were trying to peel away the truth with its mere gaze. Every crew member stood tense, waiting for a response that could change everything. "Do you understand?" the leader asked again, its voice a sharp, cold command. "You will cooperate, or your existence will be erased." Lucas swallowed hard. There was no room for mistakes. Every word mattered. He knew that resistance would end with them destroyed, but compliance could bring its own dangers. The Dominion were not merciful beings. They were conquerors, and their methods were ruthless. Yet, somehow, they were giving him a chance to make a choice. "We understand," Lucas said slowly, keeping his voice steady despite the tremor he felt inside. "But you need to understand something too. We are not your enemies. We only seek to explore, to learn. If we share our knowledge with you, it is not to oppose you. It is to find a way to coexist." The Dominion leader's eyes flickered, a brief flash of amusement, or perhaps just disdain. "Coexist," it repeated, almost as if testing the word. "You think we need your cooperation? No, human. We will take what we need, and your species will either bend to our will or be crushed. You will give us what we desire." Lucas clenched his fists, trying to steady his nerves. There was no negotiating here. The Dominion would not be satisfied with any offer he could make, but they had given him a chance to speak, and he couldn't waste it. "You speak of power, but power is not the only thing that matters in the galaxy. Your empire is vast, but even you must understand that there are forces you cannot control." The Dominion leader's expression remained unreadable, its eyes narrowing slightly. It was as if Lucas's words had caught its attention, but it wasn't ready to show its hand just yet. "Explain yourself, human," the leader said, its voice a low growl. Lucas took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew he was walking a fine line, but he had to try something. "Your empire may be powerful, but you are not invincible. There are other threats out there, things that even you cannot dominate. We humans have survived against odds that no one else in the galaxy could understand. We've faced extinction more than once and come out stronger. You underestimate us if you think we are just another species to crush." The silence that followed his words felt like an eternity. The crew looked at each other, unsure of how the Dominion would respond. Would they lash out? Would they see humanity's resilience as a challenge or a curiosity? The leader finally spoke, its tone quieter, but still filled with cold authority. "Your species is foolish. You cannot even comprehend the forces at work in the galaxy. Your survival is nothing more than a fluke, a small spark in the vast void of space. You speak of strength, but your technology, your weapons, none of it will stop us." Lucas stood tall, despite the overwhelming power the Dominion held. He had to make them see reason, or at least give them a reason to hesitate. "I'm not asking you to believe us, but think carefully. You don't need to destroy us. You need allies. The galaxy is full of dangers, and even your empire, as powerful as it is, cannot face them alone." The Dominion leader's glowing eyes flickered again, but this time there was a faint trace of curiosity. It was not much, but it was something. "Allies," the leader repeated, its voice laced with doubt. "What could your species offer us?" Lucas knew this was the moment. He had to make them understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology or their weapons. It was in their will to survive, to adapt, and to fight when the odds seemed insurmountable. "We offer you our knowledge," Lucas said, keeping his voice calm but firm. "We are a species that learns quickly. We adapt. We find solutions in the face of impossible odds. We have faced extinction and still stand. We could help you face the dangers that you cannot control." The Dominion leader was silent for a long moment, its expression unreadable. Finally, it spoke again. "Your words have merit, human, but your species is still weak. You will cooperate fully, or we will end this negotiation. Do not test our patience." Lucas felt a cold shiver run down his spine. They were not negotiating on equal terms. The Dominion held all the power here, and any wrong move could end their lives. But he had planted the seed of doubt in their minds. If they believed humanity had something to offer, there might be a chance, however small, that they could work together, or at the very least survive. "I will cooperate," Lucas said, his voice steady but filled with determination. "But I ask one thing in return: safe passage for my crew. We will give you the information you want, but we will not be your prisoners." The leader's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, as if it was weighing the request. The crew held their breath. Was this the beginning of some form of alliance? Or was this just another way for the Dominion to manipulate them? After what felt like a long silence, the leader finally spoke. "Very well. You will give us the information. But remember this: your fate is in our hands. Betray us, and there will be no place in the galaxy where you will be safe." Lucas nodded, not daring to speak further. The Dominion had made their point clear. They held all the power, and humanity's future depended on how well they played this dangerous game. As the Dominion leader stood and gestured for them to follow, Lucas felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. He didn't know if they had just made a dangerous deal, or if this was just the beginning of something far more dangerous. But one thing was certain: the crew of the Starfarer was in deep, and the galaxy would never be the same. The days that followed were a blur of tense negotiations. The crew of the Starfarer worked tirelessly to provide the Dominion with the data they requested. They handed over star maps, advanced scientific discoveries, and even detailed studies of human technology. All the while, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a razor's edge. Every piece of information they provided was another step deeper into the Dominion's grasp. The ship's crew remained in a constant state of alert. The Dominion had granted them limited freedom within the vast, heavily guarded command station. They were watched at all times, the ever-present glow of Dominion soldiers' eyes tracking their every movement. Trust was a commodity the Dominion had not yet extended. Captain Lucas had spent the majority of his time locked away in the ship's control room, staring out at the stars. The quiet hum of the Starfarer was a constant reminder that he had a crew to protect. His thoughts churned. Had they made the right choice? Was this alliance truly their best hope for survival, or had they only delayed the inevitable? The Dominion's leader, a towering figure whose mere presence sent a chill through the room, had made it clear that they would not tolerate any attempt at deception. If Lucas or any member of his crew made a single move to undermine them, the consequences would be swift, and there would be no mercy. The crew of the Starfarer had little choice but to comply. They had no way of knowing how strong the Dominion truly was, but every moment they spent within their walls made it clear that this was a force far beyond anything they had encountered before. The Dominion had brought entire civilizations to their knees. They had no reason to believe that humanity would fare any better. Then came the day when the Dominion leader called Lucas to the central command room. The vast room shimmered with light, the walls lined with holographic displays that pulsed with the kind of data humanity could only dream of. As Lucas entered, he was greeted by the same cold stare from the Dominion leader. It was a gaze that never wavered, never softened. It was a reminder that this alliance was fragile, held together by the thinnest of threads. "You have complied with our demands," the Dominion leader said, its voice a low, commanding rumble. "But now, There is more to be done. Lucas stood tall, forcing himself to meet the leader's gaze. We've given you everything we promised. We've honored our word. And you will continue to do so. The leader replied coldly. You are not the only species capable of great feats. There are others, many others. But the galaxy is a dangerous place, and even we are not invincible. We need your help. You will assist us in our campaign against a growing threat that seeks to undermine us. Lucas blinked, surprised by the sudden shift. The Dominion had never shown vulnerability before. In fact, they had appeared almost infallible in every interaction. What threat? Lucas asked, his voice calm but his mind racing. What could possibly threaten the mighty Dominion? And why were they asking for humanity's help? The Dominion leader's eyes glowed brighter, the intensity of its gaze now almost overwhelming. There are enemies, alien forces, gathering in the shadows. They are powerful, and they seek to destroy us. You may think your species is weak, but you possess a unique advantage. Your adaptability. Your ability to survive under pressure. That is something we do not take lightly. Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine. This was no longer a negotiation. The Dominion were admitting that they needed help, and they wanted it from humanity. But what would it cost them? Could they afford to continue down this path? Every action seemed to have a consequence, and Lucas had no illusions that the Dominion would be satisfied with just a simple partnership. I'll need more information before making any decisions, Lucas said cautiously, trying to buy time. What kind of threat are we talking about here? The leader's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, the air in the room felt thick with tension. They are called the Phantoms. They are a race that operates in the dark, unseen and untracked. They have no regard for alliances, no concern for power. Their only goal is destruction, and they are growing in number. Why don't you just destroy them yourselves? Lucas asked, his voice tight with suspicion. You're the Dominion. You have the resources, the power. Why come to us? We have already faced them before, the Dominion leader replied, its voice heavy with the weight of past defeat. We underestimated them. And now we cannot afford to do so again. We need your help, Captain. Help us destroy the Phantoms before they grow too strong, and we will grant your species a place in the galaxy, a place of power. Lucas remained silent for a moment, weighing the situation. The Dominion were asking for their help, but it felt more like a demand than a request. They were still the same cold, calculating empire that had shown them no mercy. And yet they were admitting weakness, showing a crack in their armor. If we help you, Lucas said slowly, what do we get in return? The Dominion leader's gaze softened just slightly, a subtle but unmistakable shift. Your species will be spared. We will not erase you, as we have done with others. We will allow humanity to thrive. Lucas looked around the vast command room, trying to make sense of everything. The risks were enormous, but so were the potential rewards. If they helped the Dominion defeat the Phantoms, humanity could be in a position of power, a position where they might not only survive but thrive in this galaxy full of powerful and dangerous species. But the question lingered in his mind. What kind of galaxy would humanity be entering? And would the price of survival be worth paying? As he left the room, Lucas's thoughts were clouded with uncertainty. The Starfarer's crew had been thrust into a galaxy far bigger and more dangerous than they ever imagined. And now they were entangled in the Dominion's web, a web that might not only secure humanity's future, but could also lead them down a path from which there would be no return. The days that followed were filled with planning. Captain Lucas and his crew had no choice but to comply with the Dominion's request. The Phantoms were a real threat, and humanity had never faced anything like them before. There was no time to hesitate. The Starfarer would be their ship, the one that would carry them into the unknown. The crew had gathered in the war room, a large space filled with digital maps, star charts, and tactical displays. They were sitting around a table, discussing their next move. Every member of the crew looked uneasy, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. The Dominion's help was a double-edged sword. They could help humanity survive, but only if they agreed to serve the Dominion's will. Captain Lucas paced the room, his mind racing. The Phantoms were unlike any enemy they had encountered. They were elusive, operating in the shadows, and almost impossible to track. According to the Dominion, they had taken down entire fleets without leaving a trace. They could attack without warning, and their tactics were designed to make them nearly impossible to defeat. You heard what the Dominion said, Lieutenant Miller, the Starfarer's communications officer, said, breaking the silence. The Phantoms are growing in number. We don't have much time. I know, Lucas replied, stopping to face the crew. But we're not prepared for this. We don't have the resources or the intelligence to fight something this dangerous. Then what do we do? Asked Commander Hayes, the ship's second-in-command. She looked as though she had already made up her mind. We either fight or we die. We've seen what the Phantoms can do. If we don't act now, we're just waiting for the inevitable. Lucas sighed. She was right. They had no choice. The Dominion had made it clear. Help them defeat the Phantoms or face annihilation. Humanity was caught in a web, and there was no easy way out. Okay, Lucas said, his voice firm. We'll do it. We'll help them fight the Phantoms. But I want every piece of intel we can gather on them. I don't care how hard it is. If we're going into this fight, we need to know exactly what we're up against. The crew nodded in agreement. They didn't like it, but they had no choice. They were about to go to war with a species they didn't fully understand, and they needed every advantage they could get. Over the next few days, the crew worked tirelessly. They pored over every scrap of information the Dominion had provided, looking for weaknesses in the Phantom forces. The more they studied, the more they realized how little they knew. The Phantoms operated in complete secrecy. They left no survivors, and there was no way of tracking their movements. Every ship they attacked disappeared without a trace. It was as though they had never existed. Then, finally, they discovered something. A single, small piece of information that might be their ticket to victory. A brief mention in an old Dominion report about the Phantom's strange behavior. It was a pattern, something that didn't fit their usual tactics. They were using an unknown form of energy, something that allowed them to remain undetected for longer periods of time. Lucas couldn't believe it. It was a breakthrough. If they could understand how the Phantoms were hiding, they might be able to track them. They might even be able to turn the tide of the war. But they had no time to waste. The Phantoms were moving faster than anyone had anticipated. The Dominion had already sent out a fleet, but Lucas knew it wasn't enough. The Starfarer and its crew would have to act quickly if they were going to stand a chance. Get to work, Lucas ordered. We've found something, and now it's up to us to figure out how to use it. We need to be ready for when the Phantoms strike again. No more waiting. The crew set to work, each member focused on their task. The tension was thick in the air. Everyone knew what was at stake. The Dominion had given them a chance to prove their worth, but Lucas wasn't sure if they could trust them completely. The Dominion were powerful, but they were also ruthless. And in the end, their goals and humanity's goals might not align. As the crew worked on their plan, Lucas spent more and more time in the command center, staring out at the stars. He couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. The Dominion had made it clear that the Phantoms were not to be underestimated. And now, they had the opportunity to learn more about them than anyone had before. But was it enough? The universe was full of dangers, and the Phantoms were just one of them. Humanity had stumbled into a galaxy far bigger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And now, they were in the middle of a war they didn't fully understand. The price of survival was steep, but there was no turning back now. Captain, Miller's voice broke through his thoughts. We've got a problem. The Phantoms, they're coming. They've found us. Lucas turned to face the crew, a deep sense of urgency settling over him. Prepare for battle, he said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. This is it. We fight, or we die. The Starfarer's engines roared to life, and the ship prepared to face the unknown. The crew had no idea what they were about to face, but they knew one thing for certain. They would fight with everything they had. The future of humanity depended on it. The Starfarer raced through the void of space, its engines pushed to their limits as they headed toward the last known position of the Phantom fleet. The crew was tense, and the weight of the mission bore down on them. Captain Lucas stood at the helm, his eyes fixed on the blinking console in front of him, trying to calm his mind. He knew the stakes. The fate of humanity and its future in the galaxy depended on what happened next. The Phantoms were not just another enemy. They were a deadly, shadowy force, unlike anything humanity had faced before. But Lucas and his crew had learned, adapted, and found a way to fight back. They had discovered the Phantom's energy signature, a weakness, one that they hoped would give them the upper hand. "Captain," Lieutenant Miller's voice echoed in his earpiece. "We've located them. They're in the asteroid belt ahead. They're using their stealth technology, but we can track them with the energy signature we found. They don't know we're coming." "Good," Lucas said, his voice steady. He had no time for doubt. "Prepare the weapons and make sure the crew is ready. We won't get a second chance." The entire ship was on high alert. The Starfarer's weapons were locked and ready, and every crew member was in position. Commander Hayes had the bridge under control, while the rest of the crew stood at their stations, waiting for the inevitable. The countdown to battle had begun. As they entered the asteroid belt, the tension in the air was palpable. The Starfarer moved carefully, navigating between the massive rocks and debris, trying to stay out of sight. They needed to get closer to the Phantom's position without being detected. But even though they had found their enemy, they still didn't know how strong the Phantom fleet was. It could be a trap. Suddenly, the quiet of space was shattered by a blast. A Phantom ship, barely visible against the backdrop of the asteroids, fired a shot, hitting the Starfarer's shields. The ship lurched violently, and alarms blared across the bridge. "Shields are holding," Lieutenant Miller shouted. "They found us." "Return fire," Lucas barked. "Target their engines. We need them disabled before they can escape." The Starfarer's guns roared to life, firing energy blasts at the Phantom ship. The blasts hit their mark, causing the enemy ship to flicker and lose power. But the Phantoms were not backing down. More ships emerged from the shadows, their sleek, dark forms blending with the space around them. "Multiple contacts," Commander Hayes reported. "They're surrounding us." Lucas gritted his teeth. This was not how he had imagined the battle would go. The Phantoms were faster, more agile than they had anticipated. But they had a plan, and they weren't about to let it slip away. "All hands, brace for impact," Lucas ordered. The Starfarer rocked as more Phantom ships opened fire. The crew held on tight, their hands gripping the railings and consoles. It was a fight for survival now. There was no room for mistakes. The Phantoms weren't just trying to win. They were trying to wipe them out. "Target their engines," Captain Lucas said. "We need to cut off their retreat. If we can take down their flagship, the rest will fall." The crew worked with precision, focusing all their firepower on the enemy's largest ship, the Phantom flagship. The Starfarer's weapons hit hard, and the massive vessel began to break apart, sparks flying from its hull. The battle wasn't over, but the momentum had shifted. "Flagship is down," Miller shouted. "The rest of their fleet is retreating." For a moment, everything was still. The Starfarer floated in the vast emptiness of space, surrounded by debris from the destroyed Phantom ships. But Lucas knew that the victory wasn't complete yet. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The Phantoms would be back, and they would be stronger than before. This was only the beginning. "Did we do it?" Commander Hayes asked, her voice low.